The truth I said about her stunned everyone. She smiled in response. The unwanted invitation? Damon Rivers stood at the entrance of the Lumine Hotel's grand ballroom, tugging uncomfortably at his bow tie as if it were a noose. The Crystal Moon Charity Gala glittered before him, a sea of designer gowns, tailored tuxedos, and the kind of champagne that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He hated these events with a passion that bordered on physical discomfort. "Stop scowling," Iris Calloway hissed beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd with predatory interest. His editor had practically strong-armed him to attending, insisting that his reputation as Millennial's most brutally honest journalist needed softening around the edges. Damon thought his reputation was fine exactly as it was. "I'm not scowling. This is my face," he muttered, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter more out of necessity than desire. "That's exactly the problem," she replied, but her attention had already shifted to the mayor's entrance, her mind calculating angles for future stories. Damon let his gaze wander across the ballroom, taking in the familiar choreography of Millennial's elite. The same faces, the same performances, the same hollow conversations about giving back while wearing watches that could fund a school. His cynicism was in full bloom when someone caught his attention. Near a large impressionist painting of the harbor, a woman stood alone, her posture relaxed yet attentive. Alina Ashford. He recognized her from previous events, though they'd never spoken. She wore a simple midnight blue dress that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, her dark hair pulled back in an elegant twist that emphasized the graceful line of her neck. While everyone else performed for invisible audiences, she appeared genuinely absorbed in the artwork before her. There was something different about her, Damon thought. She didn't orbit the room seeking validation. She simply existed in it, present in a way the others weren't. Vivian Shen, the gala's organizer, and Millennial's reigning socialite, clinked her glass for attention. "Welcome, generous friends," her voice rang out, saccharine and practiced. "Tonight we celebrate the spirit of giving." Damon watched the crowd's rehearsed enthusiasm, but his eyes kept drifting back to Alina, who stood at the room's edge, a knowing smile playing at her lips as if she saw through the performance just as clearly as he did. Perhaps this evening wouldn't be completely unbearable after all.
The observation. The evening unfolded with predictable elegance, a symphony of clinking glasses, polite laughter, and conversations designed to impress rather than connect. Damon found himself drifting through the crowd, nursing his second glass of champagne, but his attention kept returning to Alina Ashford like a compass finding north. He watched her interactions with a journalist's trained eye, cataloging details others missed. When a young server accidentally bumped into a guest, spilling wine on an expensive tablecloth, Alina was the only one who smiled reassuringly at the mortified girl, quietly helping to blot the stain while others looked away in secondhand embarrassment. Later, when an elderly donor struggled to recall someone's name mid-conversation, Alina seamlessly redirected the discussion, saving him from humiliation without drawing attention to her intervention. "You're staring," Iris observed, appearing at his elbow with fresh champagne. "At the mysterious Ashford girl." "She's not mysterious," Damon said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "She's just never been properly seen." Iris raised an eyebrow but said nothing, following his gaze across the room to where Alina stood listening, truly listening, to one of the catering staff describe her daughter's scholarship struggles. Alina's expression was intent, compassionate, asking thoughtful questions that clearly meant something to the woman speaking. The contrast became even starker when Marcus Ashford, Alina's brother, joined a group near the auction tables. Damon had interviewed Marcus once, a real estate developer with political ambitions and an ego to match. He was holding court, describing the Ashford Foundation's new initiative for emerging artists. "My vision was to create opportunities," Marcus declared, gesturing expansively. "I've personally selected each recipient, mentored them through the process." Damon noticed Alina standing nearby, her expression carefully neutral. He'd done his research after their brief assignment overlap months ago. The Foundation's art program was entirely Elena's creation. She'd spent 2 years building relationships with local artists, creating a genuinely supportive structure rather than another vanity project. Yet here was Marcus, collecting praise for work he hadn't done. And Elena said nothing, simply stepped back into the shadows. The auction began, and Damon watched as the usual suspects bid on the glamorous items: vacation packages, exclusive dinner parties, artwork that would look good in formal photographs. Then a scholarship fund was announced, something that would educate 3 underprivileged children interested in arts education. The bidding was lackluster, the cause less photogenic than others. Elena's paddle rose quietly, again and again, until she'd committed an amount that made several people gasp softly. She didn't smile for acknowledgement or look around for approval. She simply nodded once and lowered her paddle, her expression serene. Damon felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that went deeper than professional observation. In a room full of people performing generosity, Elena Ashford was the only one actually practicing it. "She's remarkable," he murmured, more to himself than to Iris. His editor studied him with knowing eyes. "Careful, Rivers. Your cynicism is showing cracks." But Damon barely heard her. He was too busy watching Elena excuse herself from a conversation with practiced grace, moving toward the terrace doors, as if seeking air that wasn't thick with performance and pretense.
The truth spoken. Vivian Chen's voice cut through the ambient chatter once more, her smile bright and practiced. "Before we conclude this wonderful evening, I'd love to invite some of our esteemed guests to share what charity truly means to them. What does it mean to give?" The microphone was passed to the mayor first, who delivered a speech about community and responsibility that sounded like it had been written by a committee. Then a tech CEO spoke about disruption and innovation in the nonprofit sector, somehow making compassion sound like a business strategy. Each speech was polished, empty, designed to enhance the speaker's image rather than illuminate any truth. Damon felt his jaw tighten with each hollow word. He glanced toward the terrace doors where Elena had disappeared, then back at the self-satisfied faces around him. The champagne in his system loosened something that had been wound tight for too long. His filter, perhaps, or simply his patience with beautiful eyes. Before he could think better of it, he was moving forward. "I'd like to say something," he announced, his voice cutting through the room's murmur. Vivian looked surprised but gestured him forward, probably thinking the journalist would offer some professional observation. Damon took the microphone, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with public speaking. He'd faced down corrupt politicians and hostile interview subjects, but this felt different, more dangerous, more real. "I'm going to be honest," he began, and a few people chuckled, knowing his reputation. "I came here tonight expecting exactly what I've always found at these events: performance. Beautiful, expensive performance. People saying the right things, wearing the right clothes, being seen doing good rather than actually doing it." The laughter died. The room's energy shifted, becoming attentive, uncertain. "But I was wrong," Damon continued, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found the terrace doors. "Because I spent this evening watching someone who embodies everything everyone else here is pretending to be." Marcus Ashford's expression darkened. Iris leaned forward, fascinated. "Elena Ashford," Damon said, his voice steady and clear, "doesn't perform compassion. She lives it. She doesn't help people because someone's watching, she helps because someone needs it. I watched her save a young server from embarrassment with such grace that no one even noticed it happened. I watched her protect an elderly man's dignity so smoothly it looked like accident rather than intention. I listened to her actually hear someone's struggles instead of waiting for her turn to talk." The silence in the ballroom was absolute now, shock rippling through the crowd like a stone dropped in still water. "Her brother took credit tonight for work she did," Damon continued, his gaze briefly touching Marcus before moving on. "She said nothing. She bid on a scholarship fund that won't get her name in the society pages.
She exists in this world of performance art and somehow remains genuine, kind, and revolutionary in the quietest possible way. He paused, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. So when you ask what charity means, what it means to truly give, look to her. Because while we're all here congratulating ourselves on our generosity, Elena Ashford is busy actually changing lives one overlooked moment at a time. She's the real thing in a room full of imitations. And I realized tonight that I've never seen courage quite like that before. The silence stretched, became unbearable. Then, as if choreographed, every head turned toward the terrace doors, where Elena had reappeared, drawn back by the commotion. Her face showed surprise, vulnerability, her eyes wide and luminous in the ballroom's golden light. For a heartbeat, she looked utterly exposed, and Damon felt a flash of panic. Had he overstepped? Had his honesty hurt rather than honored her? Then, her expression transformed. Elena smiled, soft, genuine, radiant, and the smile reached her eyes with an understanding that crossed the space between them like a touch. It was a smile that said she saw him just as clearly as he'd seen her, that his words had reached somewhere deep and true, that something unspoken had just been acknowledged by them both. In that moment, with the entire room watching, their connection became undeniable, a live wire of recognition and something far more dangerous. Possibility.
The aftermath. The ballroom erupted in a cacophony of whispers, like wind rushing through autumn leaves. Damon handed the microphone back to a stunned Vivian and moved through the crowd, aware of the stares following him, but caring only about reaching Elena. Marcus Ashford intercepted him first, his face flushed with anger. "What the hell was that?" he hissed, keeping his voice low enough to avoid further spectacle. "You had no right to put my sister in that position, to make her the center of attention like someone worth recognizing?" Damon cut him off, his tone sharp. "Your discomfort isn't my concern, Ashford. Your sister's work speaks for itself, even if you've tried to silence it." Marcus's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Iris appeared between them with her uncanny timing. "Gentlemen, let's not create tomorrow's headline tonight," she said smoothly, guiding Damon away with a firm hand on his elbow. But Damon barely registered the exchange. His eyes tracked Elena as she navigated through the sudden swell of attention, people approaching her with newfound interest, compliments they'd never thought to offer before tonight. She handled it with practiced grace, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile had become polite rather than genuine. She excused herself after several minutes, slipping through the terrace doors into the night. Damon didn't hesitate. He followed. The terrace overlooking Myronhall's harbor was blessedly empty, the cool ocean breeze a relief after the ballroom's stifling heat. Elena stood at the railing, her hands gripping the marble balustrade, her profile illuminated by moonlight and the city's scattered glow. "That was quite a speech," she said without turning, somehow knowing he'd followed. "I'm not sorry," Damon replied, moving to stand beside her, careful to leave space between them, even as something in him wanted to close that distance. "If I overstepped." "You didn't." She turned to face him now, and up close her eyes held depths he hadn't seen from across the room, intelligence, humor, and something raw that made his breath catch. "You saw me, actually saw me. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" "I think I'm beginning to," he admitted. "Most people see what they expect to see, what's convenient to see." Elena laughed softly, the sound genuine and unguarded. "And you, what do you see when you look at me?" It was a dangerous question, loaded with invitation and challenge. Damon considered deflecting, retreating into professional distance, but his honesty had already carried him this far. "I see someone who's been invisible by choice, not circumstance. Someone who's been protecting herself by staying small, even though you're anything but. I see someone who's tired of performing a role that doesn't fit. And I see..." He stopped, surprised by the intensity building in his chest. "What?" Elena prompted,
her voice softer now, moving half a step closer. "Someone I'd very much like to know better." The admission hung between them, more intimate than he'd intended. The ocean breeze picked up, and Elena shivered, whether from cold or the charged atmosphere, he couldn't tell. Without thinking, Damon shrugged off his tuxedo jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Their hands touched as she reached to hold the jacket closed, and neither pulled away. The contact was electric, sending awareness cascading through him. Her fingers were cool from the night air, delicate but strong, and when she looked up at him, her lips slightly parted, the distance between them felt both impossibly vast and dangerously narrow. "Damon, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Elena!" Marcus's voice cut through the moment like a blade. He stood in the terrace doorway, his expression thunderous. "We're leaving, now." Elena's hand slipped away from Damon's, taking his jacket with her, and he felt the loss keenly. She met her brother's glare with unexpected steel. "I'll leave when I'm ready, Marcus." "The car is waiting," Marcus insisted, moving onto the terrace. "You've had enough attention for one evening." Elena's jaw tightened, but she saw the familiar pattern, her preparing to retreat, to smooth things over, to make herself small again for someone else's comfort. "Elena has her own voice," Damon said quietly, his words for her, not her brother. "And I suspect she's tired of people speaking for her." Elena looked at him, something shifting in her expression. Gratitude, yes, but also decision. She turned to her brother with new resolve. "Give me 10 minutes, then I'll meet you at the car." Marcus looked between them, clearly wanting to argue, but something in her sister's tone must have warned him this wasn't a battle he'd win tonight. He left with visible reluctance, the terrace doors closing behind him with finality. Elena turned back to Damon, and when she smiled now, it held both vulnerability and daring. "Damon, you've complicated my carefully quiet life, Mr. Rivers." "Good," he replied, matching her smile. "Careful and quiet are overrated." "Is that your professional opinion?" "That's my entirely personal one." The moment stretched, weighted with possibility, and the knowledge that something between them had fundamentally shifted. Whatever happened next, they both knew there was no returning to who they'd been before he spoke his truth in that ballroom.
The beginning. 4 days passed in a strange, suspended tension. Damon tried to lose himself in work, a corruption case in the city council, an environmental piece about the harbor's ecosystem, but his mind kept drifting back to the terrace, to Elena's smile, to the feel of her hand in his. He'd started writing a different piece entirely, one he couldn't quite justify professionally, but couldn't stop thinking about personally. It was about genuine kindness in a cynical world, about the people who change lives through small, unnoticed actions, while others chase recognition. At its heart, though anonymous, was Elena's story. Iris read the draft over his shoulder without permission, a habit that usually irritated him, but which he'd grown to accept. "This is different for you," she observed, perching on the edge of his desk. "Softer, more hopeful." "Is that a criticism?" "It's an observation." She studied him with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "The Ashford girl got under your skin." Damon didn't bother denying it. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to everyone who knows you." Iris smiled, rare and genuine. "For what it's worth, I approve. Your cynicism was becoming predictable." He was about to respond when the office's front door chimed. Both of them looked up, and Damon's heart performed an acrobatic feat in his chest. Elena stood in the doorway, dressed casually in jeans and a soft gray sweater, carrying 2 cups of coffee and looking simultaneously nervous and determined. Her hair was down, falling in dark waves around her shoulders, and without the formal armor of the gala, she looked younger, more approachable, more real. "I'll just be anywhere else," Iris announced, sliding off the desk with barely contained amusement and disappearing into the back offices. "Hi," Elena said,
moving forward with careful steps. I hope this isn't too forward, but I recognized myself in your article. The draft version, anyway. Vivian Chen sent it around to get fact-checking on the gala. She thought the anonymous subject might want to verify details. I should have asked permission. I'm glad you didn't. If you'd asked, I would have said no out of habit. She set one of the coffees on his desk, black, 2 sugars, and how did she know that? And kept one for herself. Can we talk? Always. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, but she shook her head, glancing toward the office's back door. Actually, I was hoping we could walk. I think better when I'm moving, and I have things I want to say. 20 minutes later, they were strolling along Murren Hall's beach, shoes abandoned in Elena's car, the afternoon sun warm on their shoulders. The conversation started carefully, her thanking him again for the gala speech, him explaining his article's intention, but it quickly deepened into something more substantial. Marcus hasn't spoken to me since that night, Elena confided, her toes digging into the sand as they walked. He thinks you embarrassed him, exposed him as taking credit for my work. Did I? Yes. She smiled, but there was sadness in it. And he needed to hear it, even if he won't admit it. I've spent so long accommodating his ego, making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. Your speech forced me to see that pattern clearly for the first time. Damon stopped walking, turning to face her fully. I never wanted to cause problems in your family. You didn't cause them, you illuminated them. Elena met his gaze steadily. There's a difference, and honestly, I'm grateful. I've been invisible for so long, I'd started to believe that was all I could be. That night, you saw me, really saw me, and it reminded me that I'm allowed to take up space, to be seen, to want things. What do you want? The question came out rougher than he intended, weighted with more than professional curiosity. Elena stepped closer, and the ocean breeze carried her scent, something subtle, like vanilla and sea salt. To know you better, to understand the man who had the courage to speak truth in a room full of comfortable lies, to see if this connection I feel is real, or just the aftermath of an extraordinary moment. It's real, Damon said with absolute certainty. I've been thinking about you constantly since that night, not just as a subject or a story, but as someone I want in my life, someone who challenges me to be better, more honest, braver. Elena's breath caught, her eyes searching his face. I haven't been brave in a very long time. You're here, aren't you? He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. That took courage. Meeting you took courage, she corrected softly, but this... She closed the remaining distance between them, rising on her toes, her hand coming to rest against his chest where his heart hammered with anticipation. Her lips met his in a kiss that was tentative at first, questioning, then deepening as he pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her waist. The kiss tasted like coffee and salt air and promises neither of them had put into words yet. It was soft and searching, then more urgent, more real than anything Damon had felt in years. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Elena rested her forehead against his. This is claiming something. This is choosing to be seen. I see you, Damon promised, his voice rough with emotion, and I'm not looking away. They stood there as the waves rolled in, as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. Two people who'd spent too long living carefully, finally taking the risk of being honest about themselves, about what they felt, and the connection that had ignited with a few spoken truths in a crowded ballroom. Later, as they walked back toward civilization hand in hand, Elena leaned against his shoulder and laughed, bright, unguarded, free. What? Damon asked, smiling at the sound. I was just thinking, she said, squeezing his hand, that sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free, sometimes it brings you exactly where you're meant to be. Damon brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Then, here's another truth. I'm falling for you, Elena Ashford, and I have no intention of being subtle about it. Her smile was luminous. Good. I'm tired of subtle. Let's try honest instead. And there, with the ocean as their witness, and the future unfolding before them in all its uncertain, beautiful possibility, they began something real. A romance built not on performance or pretense, but on the revolutionary act of being truly seen and choosing to see in return.